I hope you guys can appreciate, I think it's really best to learn from other people's mistakes and not make them ourselves. Sometimes, you know, obviously you can be told a pot is hot to touch, boiling water when you're young, but until you burn yourself on it, you really don't realize how hot it is. And unfortunately, that's the same with hunting mistakes too. I like to point out the mistakes of myself that I know intimately and my clients, whether it's habitat or hunting. You see these same mistakes all over, over and over again, and people talk about them when I interview my clients, and you just see the same reoccurring mistakes, and you've seen the same reoccurring successes. So over and over again, when I interview clients and hunters and discuss with you guys on YouTube, Instagram, I think that a lot of these mistakes you can learn from, try not to repeat them yourself, and you can be way further ahead by talking to people that have a lot of experience, because if those people don't just talk about their success, then you'll learn from their mistakes, and that's what this video is all about. In 2010, I had a huge amount of mistakes, and similar to this year, culminating with the big wide 8. He was actually a 9 point. He was about 25, 26 inches wide. He looked like he was approaching boomer status as an 8 point, at least 160 plus. And it was a buck that we figured was 6 years old. We really tried to hunt him hard. It came to the third or fourth day of muzzleloader, maybe the seventh, eighth day. Had a big snowstorm. I went and sat specifically for him, and I missed him at 75 yards. I shoot my muzzleloader 30 times a year. It's on. I just messed up. And that was just the culmination of a bunch of mess ups that year. And I ended up trying to get another shot. I couldn't get the 219 primer out, got it loaded, ripped my nails back. There's actually literally blood down in the snow below my stand from ripping my nails back, trying to get that primer out. I was so panicked, I actually had a knife right in my pocket that I could have just whipped it out and pulled out that primer and shot him. Again, I had another shot. But anyways, big mistakes. And I make mistakes here and there, and I want to let you guys know about it because I don't want you guys to make them. And I think there's an kind of a recurring theme this year. But now 10 years later, I've had another season like that, and I've shot some nice bucks. I've shot 4 really nice bucks, and I'm really happy. After I shot the first 1 or 2, it would have been a beautiful season. But I've had some opportunities. One of my favorite things to do is bow hunt in Wisconsin, and I haven't filled my bow tag yet, but I could have filled at the end of October. I should have. And so I wanted to go over my mistakes. Hopefully you don't make them. Hopefully you can learn from my mistakes. I think it's important to point out my mistakes. That Diane, my wife, she laughed at me, said, you see, you are human, all that kind of stuff, and she was making fun of me. And but it was almost reassuring to her too, that even someone that is doing this for a living can make a lot of mistakes. In the first one, number 1, it was my first sit in Wisconsin, the end of October. And I talk about often that I average 1 mature buck every 6 or 7 sits, and that's happened this year, maybe even a little bit better than that. First sit in Wisconsin, beautiful mature 8 point walking by. I was self-filming, got it on film too, and it just seemed too perfect. And he seemed like a beautiful buck. And I aimed center lung. He's 20 yards away, 22 yards. And you can see in the video, maybe, but he drops like 6-8 inches. And what it did is it put the arrow right up into his back, in the back straps. He ran away. We watched that video over and over and over again. I gave him about 5 hours. Diane and Dante and I looked for about 300-400 yards. We found little pinpricks of blood on the leaves. Very difficult, extremely difficult blood trail. The neighbor was very gracious and friendly and nice to help us, to say we could look for the deer in this certain spot. He even offered that the next day we could come out, and he actually went with Diane and I for a couple hours and looked again. And fortunately that night or the next night, he had a picture of that buck, and then even a week later, a picture of that buck with the wound in his back, and he looked no worse for wear. I feel terrible about it, but bottom line, even looking in the video, for whatever reason, I have a habit sometimes of shooting center lung, and I did that in Kentucky, and luckily I went through the shoulder blade. His shoulder was back a little bit anyways, and he only went like 70, 80 yards. Well, in this shot in particular, had I been aiming down the top of the heart, bottom of the lung area, which is where I prefer to aim, you get away from the shoulder. I got good penetration on the one in Kentucky, poked a hole in the top of the heart, was lucky. but I want to stay away from the shoulder and certainly away from that hamstring area, up in there, no man's land. And had I been aiming down where I should have, it wouldn't have mattered if the buck jumped the string with that noise of the bow going off or not. I would have made a good shot. I'd have that buck. And Dylan and I probably wouldn't be sitting right here where we go up to hunt in Wisconsin on, what's the date today, Dylan? December 8th or so? Let's just say it's the 8th. I think it's somewhere, somewhere around there. I think yesterday, yeah, we'll just say the 8th. I don't know what it is, but I wouldn't be hunting still in Wisconsin because my bow tag would have been filled about 6 weeks ago. And that was the first mistake of the year. Second mistake, I call it the Booner Spook. So I talked about it. It was crazy because that day I literally had a video coming out about, I think it was that day, about not over calling. And grunt call is my favorite type of call, deer call to use. And I like when you grunt and they start coming towards you, put the grunt call away. Believe me, trust me, learn from my mistake. I don't know if I spooked the Booner or not, but he was a big, big buck. It might have been the one I shot with my gun. He didn't have brow tines, but he was in the mid to high 150s as a 8-point with no brow tines. He's huge frame, big 9-point that I passed up last year. Might have been that buck, but it was one of that caliber, 160, 170 plus, just a huge buck. And he was working a scrape maybe 70, 80 yards away from me. I didn't even get that one on film. And I grunted him. He looked my way and he started coming closer. He got 35, 40 yards away behind some hinge cuts. It was really thick up there. And he stopped. He was there for 45 seconds, a minute. And I grunted again. And right after I grunted, he proceeded to take off the other way. Kind of a hurried movement. And then I saw does running. He might have just been chasing does, but I didn't follow my own advice. And I'll never know if it was myself that spooked that Booner or that big buck or not. But that was my second sit in Wisconsin. First sit was the mishap with not aiming low enough, and then that happened. And I felt pretty dejected at that point. Now the third sit, this is when I was starting to come down with COVID. I didn't know it, but I was really weak, tired. And I'm not going to blame that one on COVID, but that one came in and it was, I believe, 7:55 in the morning, so well into shooting light, but still gray light, kind of. And I could see between two limbs. Buck came in, he was running hard, and I stopped him. He stopped right in what I thought was an opening at probably 29 yards. I used my 30-yard pin. Knew I could shoot between those two limbs. I shot, and the arrow just darted up. And even with him dropping, even if you don't count him dropping, I was 8 inches above his back. And I was really dejected. Couldn't figure out why. And I was using a Luminoc, and that green Luminoc just sat there, and I sat there all day in that stand till dark, and that thing just stared at me all day to remind me of what happened. And really, when it got lighter, I could plainly see that there was a lot of branches in between those two solid branches that I couldn't see in the lower light. That was a factor of truly not shooting in my shooting lanes that I knew were cut and open or naturally open. Feeling like I had to hurry the shot. A lot of times you feel like, this big buck's coming, it's chasing doe, you got to stop him. I could have tried to stop him in a better area. Looking back, just feel rushed sometimes, and I should have taken my time more. That's completely my fault, and I don't know how many of you been there, but there's enough brush there that arrow couldn't get through, and that was a stupid shot. Really irresponsible on my part. And I should have, I don't even remember a time where I've deflected the arrow off something, and there was one, I believe it was 2010 maybe, was one of my mishaps. Yeah, 2010, where I hit a deflected shot, and it deflected down the brisket from the lung area. My buddy Carl shot that 168-inch giant a week later, and we could see my hole. It didn't do anything to him. But I haven't deflected the arrow a lot. We usually have really good lanes, and I did in this stand, and I should have taken advantage of them. That was on me. Really, really dumb. But that was mistake number 3. And number 4. Now this was when all day sit, and my buddy Mike Pratt was in town for Minnesota gun season, and this was on a Thursday. He arrived Wednesday night, and I told him, man, these are these 50% days where we can go up into the stand, and there's real likelihood we're going to get a shot. So we get up there, and we get set. We're up there, and I was really wore out. I sat all day on Election Day Tuesday, and I got done at the bottom. I felt like just going curling up to sleep. I didn't even want to drive all the way back to Minnesota to the house. Just was really wore out. Well, this was Thursday. Didn't really have any other symptoms other than I was very, very fatigued. Mike and I got up there, and you get wore out, and you're sitting there, and I believe it was right around 10 o'clock, or Mike told me 10:18 maybe, somewhere around there, and here comes a big buck. And Mike's in the tree filming. Mike and I haven't sat together like that till I think a time in muzzleloader season. We sat back to back and said, if it comes out on the left, you shoot. If it comes out on the right, I'll shoot. And we were sitting on stools off of Argyle Road and Hoadley Road up in near Cass City. That would have probably been 86, 80 or 96, 95, somewhere around there. But we haven't sat together for a long time. Mike was the one that when I was 12, he started taking me hunting. He's 4 years older. He was 16. He could drive. Small game, squirrel, deer, everything. So he was coming to hunt in Minnesota a couple days early, sat with me, and I'm not saying that was an added pressure, but I really wanted to shoot something even just because Mike was there. It would have been a cool, fun time that we remember each last lifetime. And I can honestly say that was a complete miss, total, fill in the blank, whatever you want to add there. But that buck came in less than 20 yards. I stopped him, and it was a complete miss. And Mike even said, I think you went right through him. And I said, I missed. And we won't play the footage or the sound during that time, but I knew right away that I missed him. And I know, obviously, I wasn't aiming low enough, and it was just, again, I felt rushed, and it was just not a good situation. So it was a big mess up. That one was, I can't blame on anything, so we'll just blame that on COVID. I was really wore out at that time. I first had a fever on Saturday. That was Thursday. Might have had a fever Friday night. I don't know. But I can't blame it on that. It was just a total idiot mess up. And that was mess up number 4. Not maybe picking a spot and aiming low enough down where I should. It's been hammered home in my head. It was hammered home in my head in 2010. And that hammering home lasted for about 10 years, and then some big failure rates this year. Number 5, opening day of gun season, I like hunting with my bow. And saw a couple small bucks, several does, and sitting up in one of my favorite tree stands here in Wisconsin. And I hunt with my bow on opening day. I have for 3 years in a row, and then years before that too. A lot of different seasons. I hunt with my bow mostly during gun. Sure enough, here comes a nice buck. And it was one of those tweeners. After the season I've had, I'm kind of like, oh man, I wouldn't mind shooting that buck, but I'm not sure if he's 4 or not. And he's coming in. I was really unsure. Looking back at the footage, I don't think he was 4. But he's one of those tweeners where I just wasn't sure about it. I figured I'll pull back, and I was just kind of thinking nonchalantly. I think not being as serious as I should and not paying attention. I think I moved my bow a little bit more than I should. But I pulled back. As soon as I got back and he was in the shooting lane, he stopped. He looked right at me. I started to settle the pin, unsure if I was going to shoot or not, still trying to take a look at him, and he just turned and ran. And I'm sure he saw me move, and I wasn't being careful. And I can't remember the last time that I actually drew and spooked a deer, maybe when I was a teenager. It's been over 30 years, really long time. So just head not in the game, and that was, still recovering from COVID a little bit. I can blame it on anything, but bottom line, I messed up again. So, I've had some great encounters, and when you look at all these mess ups right here in Wisconsin, that was 5 nice bucks. I don't know if I would have shot the last one or not. I was leaning not, always with the thought, if you have to think about it, it's probably not a shooter. But I messed up bad this year. We're hoping for a little redemption today. But that was 5 bucks out of about 8, 9 sits. The third day of gun season ended up shooting that big 9-point, 155, 6, 7 inch buck or whatever it was, 154. He was in that range, so a huge buck that I'd passed up the year before, shot him with a rifle. or actually the muzzleloader deer and rifle season, but he was on that third day. So, boy, out of those first 9-10 sits during the season here in Wisconsin, I had 6 great opportunities at good bucks, at least 5 mature bucks, and it's been a good season with opportunities. And over Minnesota, I've shot 2 nice bucks, shot a really nice buck down in Kentucky. So I've had a great year. I'm trying to overcome these mistakes though, and I have no one to blame but myself. I hope, with a little honesty, that I'm bringing these mistakes to you guys, that you can learn something. Basically, I think the overall theme with this is don't be an idiot. Rely on your experiences. Go through your head those shot sequences ahead of time, which I do. I have so much lately. Is I'm going to aim right there. I'm going to aim, when that comes in, and it happens to all ages and all experiences. And please learn from my mistakes going forward. It happens to everybody, and I hope it helps you be a better hunter, whether you're still hunting this year or next year and beyond.
Now, as we transition into habitat season, I hope you've had a chance to check out my web class, How to Design Your Whitetail Parcel. It's on my website, whitetailhabitatsolutions.com. I have a link in the description, and I hope you can find it, check it out, and enjoy it this year.